Welcome back to The Breakdown with me, NLW. It's a daily podcast on macro, Bitcoin, and the big picture power shifts remaking our world. The Breakdown is produced and distributed by CoinDesk.
What's going on, guys? It is Tuesday, February 28th, the last day of this short month, and today we are talking about how the best known NFT creator is coming to Bitcoin Ordinals. Before we dive into that, however, if you are enjoying The Breakdown, please go subscribe to it, give it a rating, give it a review, or if you want to dive deeper into the conversation, come join us on the Breakers Discord. You can find a link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/breakdownpod. All right, guys. Well, I gotta be honest. I am very, very sick of constant regulatory stories. There's no doubt it's the most significant thing happening in crypto right now, and even today, there are so many things that we could discuss on that front. Robinhood revealed via their 10K annual report that the SEC had subpoenaed them shortly after FTX filed for bankruptcy, and they say that they're currently cooperating with all investigations. That Illinois version of the BIT license that I mentioned a couple weeks ago, that some lawyers called the most ill-conceived piece of crypto legislation they'd ever seen, is moving forward, with one of the sponsors saying, quote, "It's not just a trial balloon that's being floated. I think there's momentum to be able to coalesce behind something that will protect the residents of Illinois." Then we've got new proposed rules from a UK banking regulator about how financial institutions in that country can and can't interact with digital assets. Then there are Voyager assets moving around, which is raising some pretty serious questions in the community. And more intrigue around Binance, with Forbes suggesting that as much as $1.8 billion worth of their stablecoin collateral was moved to hedge funds last year around the time of the FTX collapse. Oh yeah, and then there's Coinbase suspending BUSD, and there's honestly even more. There's also the new Financial Action Task Force action plan on crypto and forthcoming global rules from the G20. In fact, ever since the collapse of FTX, it's felt like it's just been regulatory debates into revelations of bad behavior, into more regulatory debates, into more revelations, and so on and so forth. And so today, we're not doing it. We're going to discuss something else. We will obviously come back to all of this important stuff, but for today, we're digging back into the world of Ordinals, where a major NFT player has just made a big move into the space. Before we get there, however, I want to contextualize Ordinals just a little bit differently than I've seen in some other places. If you watch the Twitter discussion, you could be forgiven for thinking that Ordinals were just some new front in a Bitcoin culture war, with ostensibly Luddite maxis on the one side and would-be usurper shitcoiners on the other. There is a smidge of that. For the folks who have been banging on about Bitcoin culture fights from one side or another for the last few months, this obviously is a new front in that fight. However, I actually think that Ordinals are part of a much more significant Bitcoin moment emerging, and I use the word moment rather than narrative, which longtime listeners know is probably my favorite word, very intentionally. The moment that's emerging is a Bitcoin builders moment, in which more and more developers and entrepreneurs are deciding to build in and around the Bitcoin ecosystem specifically. The emergence of layer 2s like Lightning is a key part of that building. Taro is another protocol that has people thinking much bigger. There are also ecosystems like Stacks, which are offering different ways to build on Bitcoin. Now, not every Bitcoin builder is bought in on all of these various approaches to building on Bitcoin. Some, in fact, might even disagree heartily with how others are building on Bitcoin. But that doesn't change the fact that they're building. And building on anything tends to create positive feedback loops that lead to more building. People see others building in a specific way or on a specific protocol, and that reframes how they think about their own effort, which might make them more likely to do their own building, and then they become a builder whose building has the same type of nudge to other builders, and so on and so forth. Now, what's interesting is that this hasn't yet really converged into a Bitcoin narrative per se, in the sense that you haven't seen big podcasts or Bitcoin writers or influencers say, hey, the narrative that's going to drive Bitcoin through the next cycle is the emergence of a whole new category of entrepreneurs who are adding functionality to a Bitcoin application layer. That process of narrative formation, however, has now started in earnest, and I expect to see a lot more of it. And that narrative formation process is absolutely being shaped by and shaping the emergence of Ordinals. Ordinals are a form of Bitcoin native NFT, where people use the witness portion of a transaction to encode visual or multimedia data to specific satoshis. Now, if that felt like a big jumble of words you're not really sure the meaning of, go listen to my episode from February 2nd called A Primer on the Debate Around Ordinal Inscriptions, aka Bitcoin NFTs. In the nearly month since I put out that show, Ordinals have exploded. More than 200,000 Ordinals have now been inscribed to the Bitcoin blockchain. What's more, there's actually been money moving around them. Ordinal Punks, one of the leading inscription collections, recently had a token sell for 9.5 Bitcoin or around $214,000. There's no real marketplace for Ordinals yet. Most of the deals are being done via spreadsheets, OTC group chats, and private messages. Yet in spite of all the things that have happened in the last month or so, in many ways yesterday's news from Yuga Labs was one of the biggest moments yet. Last night around 6 p.m., Yuga Labs, the team behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club, who also now steward the CryptoPunks, announced that they were getting in on the Ordinals game. One of the company's founders, Greg Solano, published a piece on their news blog about the collection, which they're calling 12-fold. Greg writes, "Today we announced an original and experimental 300-piece generative art collection inscribed onto Satoshis that will live on the Bitcoin blockchain, 12-fold. Satoshis are the smallest individually identifiable units of a Bitcoin. An inscribed Satoshi can be located by tracking when that Satoshi was minted in time via the Ordinal theory protocol. Inspired by this, our collection explores the relationship between time, mathematics, and variability. When measuring time, the calculation base used is not uniform and varies from base 60, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, to base 12, 12 months in a year, and so on. 12-fold is a base 12 art system localized around a 12 by 12 grid, a visual allegory for the cartography of data on the Bitcoin blockchain. The collection includes highly rendered 3D elements as well as hand-drawn features, which serve as an homage to the Ordinal inscriptions currently done by hand. All of these choices are a departure from what's expected from Yuga, but, doing expected things. Now, in this post, Greg also discussed something that many have talked about, that this moment in Ordinal's history feels like a really wild early NFT moment, and it's not clear where it's going to lead. He writes, "Stepping into the Ordinals Discord a month ago felt like getting a glimpse of the 2017 era Ethereum NFT ecosystem. It's the type of energy and excitement we love at Yuga. The infrastructure and tooling around inscriptions or NFTs on Bitcoin is rapidly progressing, but it is still incredibly nascent. Much of the foundational principles that we look for are here: provenance, self-custody, ownership. But the tooling and structure we've become accustomed to with Ethereum NFTs isn't present. We expect this technology and the ecosystem around it to evolve and become more sophisticated over time. However, we don't expect it to evolve in the same way other blockchain NFT ecosystems have. We're excited about Ordinal inscriptions and what the future holds for digital artifacts on Bitcoin."
Join CoinDesk's Consensus 2023, the most important conversation in crypto and Web3, happening April 26th through 28th in Austin, Texas. Consensus is the industry's only event bringing together all sides of crypto, Web3, and the metaverse. Immerse yourself in all that blockchain technology has to offer creators, builders, founders, brand leaders, entrepreneurs, and more. Use code BREAKDOWN to get 15% off your pass. Visit consensus.coindesk.com or check the link in the show notes.
And boy howdy did this announcement trigger a flurry of reactions. Some thought that this didn't super fit into the Yuga ecosystem, which has admittedly been kind of trying to ladder up everything into a coherent pre-metaversy whole. Bored Elon Musk writes, "Nothing against Bitcoin Ordinals, they are cool, but this strikes me as pretty off-brand and random. Everything thus far in the Yuga ecosystem feels like it has the potential to become interconnected, but I don't get that sense from this. Imagine if Yuga is the Nintendo of Web3. Now think about how weird it would be for Nintendo to get into fine art." Still, Bored had ideas for how to make it work, suggesting that they, quote, "use the $10 million that probably comes from this auction and funnel every dollar into artists who commit to creating inside the Yuga universe, and particularly Other Side. Dedicate 300 plots of land, with each one acting as a living gallery. Use any future royalties to further support new artists coming in and create work that can't possibly exist in the quote-unquote real world." This is where talking about and using Bitcoin Ordinals would make more sense in my opinion. Art tends to have more permanence than gaming, which is constantly updated. Using one of the most immutable technologies would align technology and storytelling, making this announcement feel less like a trend-focused move. Now, others assumed less good faith than Bored Elon did. Brandon Frankel responded to the Yuga thread saying, "What rhymes with flash flab?" Indeed, this idea that this was all just Yuga looking for a cash grab of non-dilutive capital was pretty prevalent in the community, even when people weren't always mad about it. The Wizard of Soho writes, "Yuga, we need to raise $10 million without giving up equity. Let's sell these plebs some art on Bitcoin. That's hot right now. They will eat it up. Plebs, OMG Ordinals, Yuga dropping another mint. Take our monies. Art, Ordinals." Now, when Bitcoin Pirate wrote, "Probably double that easy." That said, while your point isn't exactly wrong, what is the goal here? Aren't all NFTs, tokens, etc. just a mark of free markets, which you so love? If people are willing to pay, then so be it. Are you implying that these will lose value in the short or long term? The Wizard of Soho responds, "Lol, my point is that it's genius. I've always been a huge bull of Yuga and even more now." Now, others made a point that this whole narrative of a cash grab sort of didn't make any sense when Yuga is literally an NFT company selling NFTs for its business. Someone pointed out that it isn't more of a cash grab than a toy company that sells more toys. Now, what about the Bitcoin culture war meme? There were some homages to it, certainly. Juicy Bits, a crypto developer at Polymedia, writes, "NFTs on Bitcoin will thrive, if only because they annoy maxis." Udi Wertheimer writes, "Multi-billion-dollar company announces Bitcoin Ordinal project. Bitcoin Magazine, 0 tweets. Sailor, 0 tweets. Maxi Podcasters, 0 tweets. What a bunch of clowns. LMAO, I cannot. I have asked some of them why they're being so mentally ill. They all told me the same thing. They're each waiting for some other maxi to take the heat first so the rest can talk about it. What a diseased community, I swear." Now, Udi's not wrong in the sense that there wasn't a lot of chatter about it, but I'm not quite as sure as him that them not tweeting about a thing they don't like is a sign of their community deficiencies. I think what it is probably a telling signal of how much enthusiasm there actually is for ordinals within the broader Bitcoin community. In other words, the silence is the tweet. Meanwhile, other Bitcoiners were very comfortable talking about how significant they believe this moment to be. Nick Carter writes, "Biggest NFT company by far embraces ordinals and Bitcoin, probably nothing. Most ordinals projects were derived or just copy-paste of other projects on other chains. Starting to see some new Bitcoin-specific original artwork emerging now." Alex Thorne, the head of firm-wide research at Galaxy Digital, says, "There's a very good chance these will end up with the highest floor price in all of the NFT world. 300 only, generative art, looks pretty cool to be honest. First major studio on inscriptions, major Yuga fanbase, selling only for Bitcoin. NFT community take notice. Yuga getting into inscriptions dramatically increases the likelihood that major NFT marketplaces like OpenSea support inscriptions." Now, in response, when someone accused Alex of being a quote-unquote hype boy, he pointed out his previous comments to CoinDesk that he had been a long-time skeptic of Yuga, specifically in the fact that their NFTs didn't convey, in his estimation, true ownership rights. This is something that Ordinals partisans point out is fundamentally different when it comes to Bitcoin NFTs that are inscribed on specific Satoshis. The ownership in that situation is absolutely indisputable. Now, others pointed out just how much this type of project could become a wellspring for teaching people about Bitcoin and how to interact with it. Eric Wall writes, "Yuga Labs is launching an Ordinal inscription collection on Bitcoin. The instructions on how to acquire them involves running a self-custodial Bitcoin wallet, requires an empty Bitcoin address, and all bids will be in Bitcoin. They also provide a guide to Bitcoin UTXOs." Alex Gladstein also wrote, even before the Yuga announcement, "Inscriptions have led to a big spike in the number of full node runners, many new Lightning users, new PSBT usage, fees versus rewards at 2.75%. The craze has died down, but this all seems good for Bitcoin." Now, people honed in on that PSBT part. PSBT stands for Partially Signed Bitcoin Transactions. This is a standard that was published in BIP 174 and updated in BIP 370. In short, it's a standard that allows multiple people to use Bitcoin collaboratively, allowing, for example, multiple parties to sign the same transaction at different times. This is an important standard for multi-sig agreements and more. And it has gotten apparently a huge boost from Ordinals. Eric Wall responded to Alex Gladstein's tweet saying, "I was hesitant at first regarding Ordinals, considering it bloaty. But the tweet you linked is incredible. It took less than a month and an actual client for PSBT swapping Bitcoin asset emerged. That's more progress than we achieved in 10 years of previous atomic swap experimentation." Dennis Porteau also wrote about this in the context of Ordinals, saying, "Partially signed Bitcoin transactions mean you never need an escrow for inscriptions. Simply share the PSBT with the buyer. You can share the PSBT publicly for a public sale or privately for a private swap. It just works. Once stablecoins and other tokens arrive via Taro, I'm eager to see whole order books based on PSBTs. These once obscure technologies on Bitcoin are finally meeting solid market demand, and it's incredible." Now, around that, he also retweeted an announcement from Orem Yomtov where Oren announced a Nostr-based decentralized order book for Ordinals. Dennis wrote, "The blossoming of Nostr and inscriptions at the same precise moment is almost too good to be true." And the point here, I think, is that Ordinals are generating a motivation for a lot of theoretically useful Bitcoin infrastructure that is now actually being built in incredibly short order. Now, there are some pretty obvious financial implications for all of this. NFT historian Leonidas writes, "The market cap of all Ordinals combined compared to the market caps of Yuga's existing collections. 12-fold could double the market cap of Ordinals overnight." It's also particularly notable to me that instead of Yuga Labs coming after people for having versions of their Bored Apes or versions of their CryptoPunks in an unauthorized way up on Bitcoin, They instead decided to get involved with an actual collection. And this gets me to one of the most interesting and frankly unexplored things, which is that this is actually giving evidence to something that Bitcoiners have talked about forever, which is the idea that the particular properties of Bitcoin itself will create a gravitational field that will eventually suck in all crypto innovation, even if it began elsewhere. This was a huge talking point back in the day that has slowly fallen by the wayside as innovation has moved elsewhere. But now you're seeing that narrative reemerge. Munib from Stacks tweeted yesterday, Bitcoin thesis. All of the best experiments in crypto will eventually come to BTC. Latest data point, Yuga Labs Ordinals. Listen, there are still tons of questions around whether this hype and momentum is something that's longer and more sustainable, or whether it's just a distraction in a bear market, which would be totally fine if that ends up being the case. But what's for sure is that it has people excited and that it's converging with a larger Bitcoin builder trend that I don't see any signs of stopping anytime soon. For that reason alone, I think it's pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. For now, guys, I hope you appreciated this temporary break from being mad at Gary Gensler. Until tomorrow, be safe and take care of each other. Peace.